Now, $2,000 a month of passive income might seem like a leap for you, especially if you're starting from nothing or less than nothing. Hopefully not. But there are some ways to do it, especially if you've got cash you can actually use to work for you, so you don't have to work so hard for it. Here's 5 ideas I have of ways you can create passive income, including especially $2,000 a month. All right, so first and foremost, you got to figure out the math behind it, right? What is $2,000 a month? That's $24,000 a year. How do you actually create that? Now, if you had your money in an online savings account, say you just earned 3%, you got to have $800,000 to then kick off $2,000 a month. And heck, if you have to pay taxes for it, really you got to have about $1 million to then, after taxes, have $2,000 a month. If you don't have $1 million lying around, I don't recommend the savings account idea, although it's an option, right? You could definitely do it, but I would recommend what are some better leverage ways to do it. Now, what if I made 10% on my money, right? If I can make 10% on my money and I want $2,000 a month or $24,000 a year, I only need $240,000. And by the way, if I make 12% on that money, that's 1% a month, I only need $200,000. That will pay me 1% a month or $2,000 a month as well. I can do it with a lot less. Now, if you're thinking, oh, I don't even have $200,000, I get it. That's a lot. But again, we're talking about true passive income, right? Everybody is telling you, and really not telling you, they're selling you on social media and online, and the programs are selling you. Usually it's about how to create some part-time business or job to then generate $2,000 a month. Well, if that were the case, you might as well just get a part-time job to make $2,000 a month, right? And so we're not talking about that. If you want to be passive, it does require money to be able to do that, at least if you want to do it in a much easier fashion. So let's look at that, because how can you actually do that? What are some strategies or ways you can actually do? Here's, like I mentioned, 5 of the ones that I actually prefer myself. All right, so number 1 is you can lend your money to other investors. So instead of being the investor, trying to find the deal, and then you have to have all this education and training and time, what if I actually invested my money in those that already are doing it? So if I lend my money to an investor, I can get a contractual return. Just like when you go to the bank and you say, I want a mortgage. And you go to them, but you'll say to the mortgage company, you'll say, all right, looks like the going rate right now is 7%. 7% it is. And that's the rate you agree upon. What happens if you don't make that mortgage payment? If you go a couple months and not making a mortgage payment, they're taking that house away from you, aren't they? Any of the equity in that property, it's all theirs. You get nothing back. So naturally, you want to pay that payment back. Well, let's reverse it. What if you could become the bank? What if you could be the one lending your money? You're the one that has the ownership on the property, and you get paid interest, and if they stop paying you, you at least get the property. And the great thing is, I like to make sure that when I lend my money, there's at least 25, 30% or more of equity, so that if I ever do have to take it back, I have a lot of flexibility in how well I can sell that property. I can sell it quickly and still make some money back and then some. And that, as a result, that's why the investor doesn't want to lose the property either. They want to keep it because they want to make that money instead. So there's this vested interest in you that they want to make sure they pay you back. Now, you could do short-term lending, you could do long-term lending. Short-term lending might be anywhere from a few months, or it could be even up to maybe like 12 months. Those are usually people that are looking just to buy a property and flip it. Maybe they renovate it and they sell it for a higher price. They make their profits and they pay you just the interest on that money. Why do they use you instead of the bank? Because you're so much easier to get money from than the bank is. The bank, they have all this red tape, you have to jump through all these hoops, and even then the bank will still charge a lot of interest. Why don't they just pay the interest to people that they know, like, and trust too? And so investors will pay interest to you instead and pay you as if you're the bank. And you really are their bank, because if they don't pay you, you get the property. So that's a great way to do it. And there's even long-term options too. Sometimes they can go on for years, 10, 15 years. I have a friend who actually borrows money from a lot of investors. He's got some investors, they've loaned him money for 30 plus years. And they're now into their elderly years, and they're like, no, I want the long-term stuff. I don't even have to figure out what the next deal is. If it's 15 years, I love it. And so they'll lend the money for 10 or 15 years, but then when that gets paid off, they just turn to him and say, what else you got? And then they go do it again. And they create that nice relationship, that lender-borrower relationship there. That's an awesome way, an awesome strategy to be able to make good money right away. All right, another way you can do it is syndications. Now, if you've never heard what a syndication is, the easiest way to describe it is this. It's usually everybody gets together to pool their money to then invest often in a big project. It could be an apartment building, it could be self-storage units, it could even be assisted living homes. Heck, it can even be oil and gas. It can even be a car wash for that matter. It could be all kinds of businesses or investments, but everybody pools their money together into an investment. Syndications are a great way. You can spread the risk out. You get a percentage of all the returns. Sometimes they'll pay you an X% return on that money. They'll pay you maybe quarterly on. And other times they might pay you a little bit of the cash flow up front, but they'll pay you more on the back end when they sell the property. It could be 5 to 7 years down the road. But you're in it together. You guys are all in that investment together. The good news is if there's any lawsuits, you're protected because you're a limited partner in that deal. But that's a great way you can be able to kind of really leverage what little cash you might have to be able to do something big. This could even be hotels. I've even heard of people doing it with vacation properties. They've done it even with coffee farms, marijuana farms. By the way, I don't recommend those necessarily. Those may or may not work out too well. They're kind of higher risk. But there's so many variety of ways that you can invest in things where you're the direct investor in that deal versus someone who's just throwing their money away in the stock market hoping that something comes back, right? Now, I'll tell you this much, you have to be careful. It's not about the investment as much as it is the investor. Do they have a good track record? Will they pay you back? Do we know? Or have they actually had experience with this? I'll give you one word of warning. I've had people that are syndicators that I've known, even friends of mine, that all of a sudden they couldn't find apartment deals, so they said, I'm going to do hotels now. Or maybe I'll do a hotel conversion into something else, into a field that they know nothing about. Or maybe they say, hey, I'm working in the Midwest, but now I want to do something in the Southwest, right? So it's a completely different city that they don't know much about. That is a gamble. That is high risk. You want somebody who has a good track record where they've done the same boring investing, because I think boring is sexy personally. Well, I mean, at least that's what my wife tells me. She says I'm kind of sexy and boring, but you want something boring, right? You want something that actually works because they've done it over and over and over. They can almost do it like the back of their hand, like with their eyes closed, they can do that kind of investment. Those are the best syndicators. Those are the best syndication opportunities because they know the rules, they know what it takes to make it successful. Don't be the one that guinea pigs with their money because they're trying something new. Do not fall into that trap. Let them gamble with other people's money, not yours. So one thing I'll just give you as an additional little bonus here. Many times you have to be what's called an accredited investor. Accredited investor means you either make at least $200,000 to $300,000 a year, depending if you're single or married, or you have at least $1 million in net worth, not counting the house you live in. So if you don't qualify for that, there are a lot less syndicated opportunities, but there are still some out there. But again, make sure you're doing your due diligence, make sure you're being careful. By the way, disclaimer, I'm not giving you any investment advice here. All right, now the third thing are rental properties. Now you could go buy your own rentals. You can always go find the property. You can deal with the tenants and do all that kind of stuff. Maybe you love doing that. I personally don't. I like it to be much more passive. And so what I like to do instead is I actually like to go and buy a rental property that's a turnkey rental. This is a property where you can buy it anywhere in the country. You find a turnkey company that specializes in those areas. They help you find the property, they help you buy the property, and then they property manage it for you so that you can be hands off. Yes, you pay for the mortgage, you'll pay for the property management fees, but everything else is profit to you. So one, I'd tell you as advice is make sure you find something that actually cash flows. Bank on appreciation. Don't let them convince you that, hey, you won't make any money, but down the road, if the market values go up, then you'll make money. That's a gambler's way. That's what I fell into, that trap in the last recession, and that did not work well for me. So I'm just gonna say, make sure cash flows first, but if you get appreciation, it's awesome because you can get 4 types of returns. You get the cash flow from the property, you get the appreciation, you also get the fact that the renters pay down your mortgage for you because all that money that they're paying in rent, even before the profits, are paying down your mortgage. And then 4, there's tax benefits because you often pay little to no tax on those properties, on that cash flow that you're earning. So the cool thing is that, like for example, I bought a property in Memphis 6 years ago. That property, just so you know, started out about, I put $32,000 down. I was making about $340 a month, right? So I was making a pretty good cash flow on that. But each year, as they renew the lease, that rent goes up. Currently, guys, I'm making $710 a month. I'm making about $9,700 a year on that property. So yeah, I'm making about $810 a month on that property, guys. That's a lot. That's like over $9,000 a year. Think about this. If you're trying to get to $2,000 a month, now it may not happen today because I started out about over $300 a month, but to build up to over $800 a month over those 6 years, guys, even if you had to wait 6 to 10 years, you could maybe buy a few rental properties that might only be, say, $30,000, $40,000 down payment that could eventually start paying you that $2,000 a month. It wouldn't be today, but in 5 or 10 years, it could be with maybe less out of pocket than we were talking about. Now, let me give you an example because sometimes people will say, well, really, can I make $2,000 a month? I had this one woman that she was a health coach in Arizona in her mid-50s, and she was saying, hey, I've listened to your Money Ripples podcast. It seems great and all, but I want to see if it can actually work for me. And so I started looking at her situation, saw that she had about $250,000 in mutual funds. Now, understand, if you're somebody who has mutual funds, you're only supposed to pull off 3% a year. So for her, that means that she was only supposed to take out $7,500 a year max. That's like $600 a month. So I asked her, I said, what do you want per month? And she said, $2,000 a month. I said, awesome. Well, how long is it that you want to hit that goal? Like, how many years down the road? She's like, man, Chris, if I can hit $2,000 a month in 10 years, I would be thrilled. I would love it. I said, what if you could do it this year? She said, come again? I said, well, you have $250,000, right? Well, if you put in some of these investments that we talk about, some of these investments pay you at least 10% a year. What's 10% of $250,000? She said $25,000 a year. Yep, which is just over $2,000 a month. And she's like, you gotta be, please tell me you're lying right now. Like, there's no way. Like, it was so shocking that she could actually retire that year versus having to wait 10 years, because that's what her financial advisor told her, that it just blew her mind. She didn't even think it was possible. And that's the thing, guys. Like, it's not about how much money you have, it's about how hard it works for you, so then you don't have to work so hard for it. Now, if you're like her and you wanna know, well, what could I do in my situation? I've got some money. How could I turn that to passive income? If you wanna see how to actually do that, go to moneyripples.com. There's a passive income calculator tab you can click on, fill out the calculator, and it'll spit out the numbers of what you could actually create in your own situation. So go check that out now.